Hey, what's up? It's Symphony here. Subscribe to my brother Mr. Creepy as Hell channel, and when you're watching his videos, make sure you stay in one piece.
I lived in a farm with my aunt and uncle. My parents were sadly deceased. We raised the cattle. We had a bunch of cows and pigs, and usually we sell them to people who buy them. That's how we make our money. But in the fall of 2017, some strange stuff started happening to our cattle. And I'm going to recount some of the things that we discovered in our farm. There was this one time, it was around September 30th. My uncle got up around 4:30 a.m. to start feeding some of the livestock, including the cows and the pigs. When he got to the cows, he counted 20 of them. That was strange because there was supposed to be 22 cows in the barn where the cows stay at. As my uncle began to investigate, he walked it further into the barn and he saw 2 cows laying down, which was strange because most of them were up ready to eat their breakfast. As my uncle walked it closer to the 2 cows laying down, he saw something that horrified him. Upon closer inspection, he noticed that the 2 cows were dead. But the way they died was so strange. He looked at the cows and he noticed that they had a large hole, a circled hole in their stomach. Later that day, my uncle made a police report about what happened, and the 2 deceased cows were taken away. A couple of days later, an autopsy was performed on them, and what was discovered would disturb me, my aunt, and my uncle for as long as we could remember. When they did an autopsy report on the 2 cows, they discovered that everything inside the cows were gone. Blood, guts, liver, everything inside the cows, including their hearts, were all gone. At first, before the autopsy was made, my uncle thought that maybe it could have been a wild animal that could have killed both of the cows, even though it looked strange and how they both died, but now he wasn't so sure. I was creeped out. Who could have done this? Then there was a second incident that really terrified me, and this actually involved me. It was around October the 2nd or the 3rd. I know it was in October. It was around 6 o'clock in the evening. I was feeding the pigs their food when I noticed something strange was happening. Now keep in mind, this was fall, so it got darker a lot more earlier. It was already pitch black by the time 6 o'clock came around. As I was feeding the pigs their food, I noticed that they all started to act strange, including the horses and the cows as well. Also, my dog that was with me was starting to act strange. The pigs started to become very frightened. My dog began to bark and growl. The cows began to run into the barn very quickly, while the horses were acting very frantic and also running into their barn. After all the farm animals ran into their designated barn, it got really quiet outside, besides my dog whimpering quietly. But I noticed the farm outside was very quiet. It was really, really quiet. There was not even any sounds of insects or any sounds of birds or owls making any noises. It was so quiet, and it wasn't even windy. The wind was still. Something was very wrong. As I was making my way to make sure all of the animals were in their cages, I saw a flash of light, and then I saw that light again. It was flashing very quickly. My dog began to growl, and then he ran, and before I can even try to look for my dog to grab him, I saw an object. It was moving quite quickly, but it was very quiet at the same time. It was a circular object that had lights shining on the bottom of it. And then it moved it very quickly and disappeared. And then I saw it again, but this time I saw it landing off in the distance. I managed to see my dog, and my dog was running in the same direction that weird object landed at. I chased after my dog, but he moved it too fast. I continued to walk to that distance very quietly. And then I heard my dog yelping out in pain before he went silent very quickly. And then that weird object flew back up in the sky and just disappeared. I ran to try to find my dog, and when I did, I saw something terrifying, and it made me want to throw up at the same time. Bearing with me, what I'm about to describe may really be disturbing for some. My dog was just flat, with no blood, no bone, or nothing. I'm not even joking. It was almost like something took everything out inside of my dog, and the thing that I'm seeing there was just like an outfit. That's the best way I could describe it. It was almost like someone just peeled the skin off my dog. It was really gruesome, and I threw up after seeing that. I ran back into my house, and I told my aunt and uncle about what happened. My aunt and uncle ran to the scene of what happened to my dog, and they were horrified. That's when both my aunt and uncle thought about moving out of this farm and living somewhere else in a different place. In between what happened to the cows and what happened to my dog, there were other strange things that happened as well, but they didn't come nowhere near the two situations that I just explained to you right now. And the last thing that happened was the most worst out of the two, and this made me, my aunt and uncle, pack up everything that we could bring and just abandon the barnyard and the house altogether. This happened 2 days before Thanksgiving. I was doing my chores, feeding the animals and cleaning up their waste, and this was around the morning time. As I was doing that, I noticed that all the animals were acting strange once again. The pigs, the cows, and the horses were acting frantic again. They all began to run into their areas where they slept at. And once they ran inside, they didn't even want to come out, despite me trying to get them to come outside, but they didn't. I also want to mention this was around noon, but it was more darker outside. It was rainy and it was very cold as well. I was wondering what had them acting this way, but that's when I heard a strange noise off in the distance. I got out of the cattle and I walked outside. At first, it looked like my deceased dog. I thought for a moment that maybe he was still alive, and maybe the death or the skin that I saw was a different dog. It stood there, what I thought was my dog. I walked it closer to it, but then I stopped right in my tracks as my blood began to turn frigid cold. My heart was pounding. It felt like someone just took the air all around me and sucked it out. I couldn't even breathe upon what I was witnessing. I saw what I thought was my dog standing up on its hind legs, and then it began to grow into a large, unknown creature. It looked like it was shape-shifting, and then it let out this bone-chilling, ear-piercing scream. The way this thing was screaming, it did not sound like it came from an animal that walks among this planet. I ran quickly inside the house, and I told my aunt and uncle about it, but they already heard the sound. And before we can even make the next move, we heard all of the livestock crying, or sounding like they were crying in pain. We ran out quickly And what we saw was a bloodbath. All of our farm animals, our horses, our pigs, our cows, were all dead. It was really horrifying. I'm not going to really get into the details, but it was super graphic. Later that evening, my uncle and my aunt were packing, and I was packing as well. We were going to ditch the farmhouse. There was no way we were going to stay here. Apparently there's something sinister going on, something supernatural that's going on that's harming all the cattle, and that killed my dog and all the farm animals as well. We didn't feel comfortable staying at this farmhouse. We left and never looked back. As far as I know today, the house is still abandoned and no one lives there. Everything that I encountered or my uncle encountered, we really tried to find the logical way to try to explain what we witnessed, but none of it doesn't make any sense, or you can use logic. It really doesn't. I'm just glad that we left that place. I will never step foot back there again.